What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so normally we would have done Batman the White Knight on Wednesday, but we covered Dark Knight's Metal. And so we're covering this today, but this will come back like next week, we'll cover it on Wednesday. Like, I prefer to keep this every week on a Wednesday. That way you guys can expect to, see the videos come out. But this is continuing to be just such an amazing story, and it's such a cool story because the Joker is so smart. Like, I love the way this is done by Sean Murphy. The whole story so far is that Jack Napier has basically gone sane, the Joker's turned into a sane human being, and has decided that it's basically his responsibility to conquer the city of Gotham, to basically take it over using the will of the people, and that he's essentially ensnared the various villains, Poison Ivy and Bane and Two-Face and all these different people using the power of the Mad Hatter, basically slipping all these people mind control nanomachines that the Mad Hatter uses, and in turn doing it through Two-Face, feeding them drinks, and then controlling their minds using the actual headband of Two-Face. But it's cool because what this does is this opens up basically with like all the villains of Gotham just launching an attack on the city of Gotham itself. And of course it requires the entire Bat family to respond. And at this point, it really only consists of like Batman, Batgirl, and Nightwing, Dick Grayson. And that's really about it. So it's pretty short as it is. Now they also have the police who are fighting on their side. But what ends up happening here is you have all these different villains who are basically rampaging across the larger city of Gotham, with Batman heading to Backport, which is where, a handful of them are somewhat at. And where initially Commissioner Gordon's idea is we all have to head to Backport, we all have to help out Batman. At the end of the day, Bullock and even other people like Renee Montoya are just kind of like, no, Batman can handle himself. We need to focus on the larger problem in the main Gotham City itself. Now, of course, what this does is it kind of puts into sharp relief the idea that Batman's willing to go to any length to take down the Joker. And it almost makes Batman look like he's not looking at the big picture. Because what ends up happening is he basically says, like, the Joker's behind this, we have to find the Joker. We can go to Backport, we can take these guys out. They're not going to destroy the library the Joker just built. There's no way that's going to happen, but it does. And again, it's brilliant here because the Joker, when he went sane, he basically made the case that Batman does everything he can to take down villains with no real thought to the collateral damage. Batman doesn't care about who gets displaced from their homes when buildings are destroyed. Batman doesn't really care about how much it costs to rebuild things when he destroys stuff. All he cares about is getting the bad guy. And this fits directly into that notion because Bane and Killer Croc start tearing down the library. But to everybody who's watching all this unfold, Batman chased down a couple of villains, cornered them, and they freaked out and destroyed a building. It's Batman's fault. That's how people will see it. That's how they will perceive it. Now, Batman runs in there and basically tries to subdue these guys, but gets caught in, all the destruction and everything, only for like Two-Face and Killer Croc to basically have gotten away. So Batman is perceived as being single-handedly responsible for the destruction of all these different things. Now, at this point, we switch over to Joker himself, to Jack Napier, and we end up finding out this was exactly what we thought it was. It was just a distraction. His idea was to basically wait until the smoke cleared and then go to the law offices of Hill and Hill, the former law offices of the current Mayor Hill in Gotham City. And what he does is start sifting through all these old files. He starts sifting through all this old information, all these little secrets and things like that are not supposed to be readily known. Now, what we end up finding out as a reason for this is because he basically goes in front of national television and he says, what you guys don't know is that like people are profiteering off of you. Every single time Batman goes to fight a villain, money has to be spent in order to fix the buildings that he's destroyed, in order to repair the roads that are damaged or whatever the case may be. And the question that Jack Napier presents here, the Joker presents here, is where does this money come from? Who's spending the money to do this? And this is when he basically makes the announcement of what's called the Batman Devastation Fund. That unbeknownst to all the people in Gotham, that what's been happening is exactly what we discovered in the last video, that you have this kind of taxpayer relief fund, more or less, that taxes have been increased or whatever the case may be. There's kind of a disaster relief fund that exists out there, but because there's no real natural disasters in Gotham, this is a ruse. It's a way for the wealthy to essentially funnel taxpayer money into the Batman Devastation Fund. And then as we discovered in the last video, what they do is they basically repair these buildings, and then when Batman destroys an area, it drives down the cost of everything. So the wealthy can basically repair these buildings, improve on them dirt cheap, and then sell them at top dollar. They're using taxpayer money to basically charge taxpayers more money for the houses they have to buy or buy back in order to return to where it was that they were when Batman destroyed everything. And so again, it's pretty heinous. What Jack Napier is doing is he's sitting down and he's revealing kind of the truth. He's basically showing the man behind the curtain in the city of Gotham and saying, your city is rampant with corruption like you wouldn't believe. Now this is big because let's say, for example, that like this sparked a revolution in the city of Gotham. And let's say that like the government and the wealthy, they basically like bring in the National Guard. Well, the National Guard has brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and sons and daughters who are just the people of Gotham. And I would bet all the money in my pockets to all the money in your pockets that if it came down to those police officers and those National Guardsmen and National Guardswomen who have been set on the path of trying to quell this revolution, that if they have to make the choice between pointing a gun on the wealthy and the powerful who caused all this or pointing a gun on their own friends and family, they'll point a gun on the wealthy and powerful. And in that moment, it would come into sharp relief the idea that the wealthy and the government have no power. And that's the cool thing, because once that goes away, once that line of defense vanishes, then suddenly it's open season. It's really, really interesting. It's a way for Jack Napier to win the people because that's all you ever really need. Now at this point, we pick up with Bruce Wayne, of course, returning back to the Batcave, kind of fixing himself up and so on and so forth. But then Alfred wakes up when Batman basically collapses. And because of this, what ends up happening is Alfred actually removes himself from wherever it is he's been healing from and puts Batman in his place. Now this is cool because what this does is it actually kills Alfred. Alfred basically sacrifices his life in order to heal Batman. Now, in truth, Sean Murphy doesn't make this into like a great big huge like one shot, right? It's not like a brunt of the story because it doesn't need to be a great big huge thing because we know it's a huge thing. Alfred dying for the sake of saving Bruce Wayne is insane and is huge. Alfred is the moral compass of Bruce Wayne. If Alfred's not there, Batman will just run awry. There'll be no one to reel him in when he starts to cross over that line that he's always tried to keep from crossing over. And so what happens is you have Dick Grayson, you have Barbara Gordon who sit down and say, it's up to us. We're the ones that basically have to hold Batman back and keep him from crossing over and losing his mind in its entirety. Something else that I want you guys to notice too, and this is a pretty cool moment. It's actually one of my favorite moments from the story. Sean Murphy shifted things up in a pretty amazing and interesting way here. While Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson are at the cemetery, basically, you know, paying their respects to Alfred, there's a tombstone there for Jason Todd. Now, our initial response would be, Jason Todd was killed by the Joker. You know, he was basically beat up with a crowbar and then blown to pieces, and Batman didn't get there in time, and so on and so forth. No, that's not what happens. What Sean Murphy actually tells us is that Jason Todd was Robin before Dick Grayson. And that's huge. It's cool. Like it's really, really cool to me. That's why I like these stories that are kind of out there, is because to me, telling the same chronology all the time gets really, really boring and really mundane. And shifting things up just enough to make them different is actually really, really interesting to me, because Dick Grayson doesn't really know anything about Jason Todd. All they know is that Jason Todd's death kind of set in motion the reality of the fact that you can't save everybody, that Batman couldn't save every single person that mattered. But from here, what we also do is pick up with another little bit of a change. And we basically have the Joker who shows up in Backport and actually meets with Duke Thomas. Now, Duke Thomas is grown. He's a grown man in this instance. And again, this is really fascinating to me because Duke Thomas in the main DC line of comics is young. I mean, he's basically the Signal. I mean, it's Batman and the Signal. We don't really know exactly what he's going to be, but we know he's not going to be a Robin. We're just kind of waiting for his character to be fleshed out. But in this story, he's grown. He's fought in the military. You know, he's basically like special forces for a while. He's kind of like the guy who doesn't really trust Jack Napier, but he's somewhat of the tour guide here, because what Duke says is that I don't necessarily trust you, but Backport loves you, because Backport views Jack Napier as the only guy who's on their side. They view him as the only guy who's willing to help them out. And again, this sets in stone the idea that the Joker's hitting all the right marks, that he's getting all the right support from all the right people. Now, what this also does is this hits the idea that Jack Napier could make a run for like mayor and basically become the mayor of Gotham, and he would have the vote support in order to pull it off. And that's again where you start to back people into a corner. And so what we end up doing here is we actually pick up with a woman who basically breaks into the facility of the Joker, sort of, but not really. But she basically comes across the Mad Hatter. And of course, you know, the Mad Hatter is espousing different things like, you know, Alice in Wonderland quotes and so on and so forth, which is what he does. But this woman, who's actually not the Joker's daughter, thank God. As soon as I saw this, I thought it was like the return of Joker's daughter from like the New 52. And I was like, oh man, I really hope not. There were a lot of people who hated the idea of Joker's daughter. The Joker's daughter was designed to be kind of a stand-in for like Harley Quinn in the New 52. It was an attempt to basically replace her and even kind of replace the Joker to a degree and give us like a new version of the Joker or something along those lines. I have no real idea what the purpose was. And that was evidence in the fact that she just kind of floated around and there was no real story to be told about her. She was kind of interesting in the beginning, but then after that, you know, people were just kind of like, nope, give us the old Joker, which I'm glad we did because we got Scott Snyder's Joker, who was insane. But this girl breaks into the facility only to find out that basically like Clayface is being controlled with with a card of the Mad Hatter that's been slipped inside his brain, which is kind of cool to see the interior of Clayface once he like turns to dust and fades away, and it's just a brain with eyes attached to it, which I guess still works. I mean, I don't know how it's getting oxygen. No clue. Anyway, so this chick is cool because she basically like the Mad Hatter spills the beans and says everything that's going on here is being done by Jack Napier. Jack Napier runs everything. No idea what it is, what he's gonna do with it, but Jack Napier is basically running the entirety of the criminal empire. But this is huge because what this means is that Jack Napier's secret is no longer a secret. The word is out now that Jack Napier is actually the one behind the scenes pulling the strings when it comes to all the different villains in Gotham City. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.